I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. You simply pour a can into your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. So pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 104. Today on the show, we're joined by Field & Stream's hunting editor, Will Brantley, to talk Kentucky deer hunting and much more. Morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Sitka Gear. And today, as I just mentioned, we've got a great guest joining us as Mr. Will Brantley, a terrific deer hunter and the hunting editor over at Field & Stream, is with us. And we're going to be talking about his experiences deer hunting in Kentucky and a number of the different strategies and tactics that have worked from there, as well as some of the things he's learned from other hunters across the country as part of his job at Field & Stream. It's going to be a great chat. But before we get to that, in other news, my co-host Dan Johnson is not with me today, as he's out of town, I think, for a basket weaving conference. So it's going to be just me and Will. But before we get that interview off and running, I want to give a quick plug for my other podcast, the 100% Wild podcast. If you haven't already checked it out and subscribed, I'd really encourage you to do so. If you haven't heard of it yet, it's my new joint collaboration with Drury Outdoors, in which myself, Matt Drury, and a great guest each week like Mark or Terry Drury or other DoD team members answer your specific hunting questions. Our first 3 episodes have tackled turkey hunting, balancing hunting with family time, and self-filming your hunt. So be sure to give those a listen and please subscribe. And now, quickly, before we give Will a call, we do need to pause briefly for a word from our partners at Sitka Gear, who help make this podcast possible. And today we're continuing our series of Sitka stories, this one coming from Chad Bell of Louisiana, who a handful of years ago headed up to Illinois for his second year of Midwestern deer hunting. And on this specific day, he snuck into a stand in the afternoon and then soon spotted one of those famed Midwestern bucks raking a tree in the distance, and then unbelievably watched as it walked almost on a string right to the base of his tree. The buck stopped. He sniffed at the ground right under Chad's stand and then looked up. He stared for a while, but couldn't lock on anything, so he looked down again, sniffed some more, and then looked up again. Chad picks up his story right there, describing what that moment felt like.
It was extremely intense. In fact, being that was only the second year that I had actually taken bow hunting back up. And at that point, I had never killed a buck with a bow. All my animals over the years of my hunting had all been killed with a gun, other than some does that I had killed with a bow. But I'd never taken a buck with my bow. So, I was all the thoughts going through my head of, is this a deer that I want to shoot? Is he tag worthy? My buddies going to be excited for me if I shoot this deer. But the intensity of that moment, I think it was just everything racing through my mind, and to feel like I was so pinned down, but I was so close, and I think that's what we really crave as whitetail bow hunters, is getting close to those animals and being able to deceive them. But whether we, tag them, put a tag on them or not, is to be able to get so close and watch them in their environment and see how they react and learn from the things that they do as they're trying to, find us and figure out what that is. It was absolutely intense. And, I just my brain was racing. Am I going to draw this bow back? If I decide to, is he going to give me the opportunity to get my bow drawn? Am I going to be able to make the shot? Am I going to get busted by these other deer in the field? There were just several things going through my mind, but it was just a thrilling experience.
That feeling right there, that is what it's all about. And this was a Sitka story, as Chad was wearing the Sitka Fanatic jacket and bibs on that hunt. If you'd like to learn more about Sitka, you can visit sitkagear.com. And now, let's get back to the show and give Will Brantley a call. All right, with us now on the line is Will Brantley. Welcome to the show, Will.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to spend some time with you here and catch up. It's been a little bit of time. So how you been?
Oh, I've been good, man. It's what is it now? Late May. I'm not even sure of the exact date. I just got back from a week in Nebraska turkey hunting. Been turkey hunting like crazy around here in Kentucky and Tennessee before that, and down in Florida before that. So I'm kind of a turkey nut. It's been a good spring and kind of winding down and shifting gears. And man, I've been seeing a few bucks running around with some little velvet nubs, and I don't know. It's kind of got the wheels turning for this fall. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's exciting. When you finally start seeing those velvet antlers, it just gets me like really the blood starts pumping once these early summer months arrive.
Yeah, for sure.
How'd the turkey hunting go?
Man, I've had a good season. I've had a really good season. We had a good start in Florida. Killed a couple of birds down there. Took a buddy of mine. Took his little boy here in Kentucky during the youth season. Got to see him kill his first turkey. Killed my 2 Kentucky birds. Killed a Tennessee bird. Killed a few birds in Nebraska. My wife killed a bird. So we had a pretty outstanding season. We've got a lot of turkey meat in the freezer. And I actually had a big old plate of fried nuggets last night.
Nice. That's funny. That's exactly what I had for dinner, too. It's that time of year.
There you go. Yep, absolutely.
That's awesome. So I guess before we get too much further, Will, for those that aren't familiar with who you are, can you just share with our audience a little bit of your background and what you're doing today with Field & Stream? Yeah.
Well, I'm Field & Stream's hunting editor. It's hard for me to say hunting with a G. You know what I mean? I just want to say hunting editor, but
Yep.
It's just kind of a product of where I'm from, I guess. But yeah, I'm the hunting editor and have been in that position for a little more than a year now. Was a regular contributor, freelancer to Field & Stream for a number of years before that. And during those years before that, I was also web editor for Realtree Camouflage. Handled all of their website content. Done a lot of freelancing over the years, Mark, for a lot of different magazines. I kind of got my start in this business as an intern with Outdoor Life, which of course is Field & Stream's sister, but it's also somewhat rival publication. They share an office in New York. Of course, the staffs of both magazines are good friends, but it's a good friendly competition. But yeah, that's where I got my start. Actually, was on the Outdoor Life side and did some freelancing for Outdoor Life for a number of years, and just kind of gradually moved over to the Field & Stream side, which is where I am today. So far as my hunting background, I'm a native of Western Kentucky. I grew up in a little town called St. Charles, Kentucky, which is pretty close to Dawson Springs, Kentucky, neither one of which are very big. St. Charles got a population of, I think it was 453 last time I was home. And, man, there was just a lot of critters around there. Hunting and fishing was my thing as a kid. I squirrel hunted every day after school. Deer hunted, I think I killed my first deer when I was 10, hunting with my dad. Started bow hunting when I was, in 6th or 7th grade, and turkey hunting about that same time. And Man, that's all I ever did growing up, to be honest with you. I didn't play many sports. I don't want to say I was the weird kid that kept quiet in class. I had plenty of friends, but man, I didn't go to a lot of parties or anything like that. I was always hunting or fishing, doing something out in the woods. That was just always my thing. And then, I always liked to write. I was always really intrigued with coming home and hanging around the adults. My dad and all of his buddies, they all hunted, and I just loved sitting there listening to those guys tell their stories at the end of a hunt. And I was really fascinated by the details that the guys who really knew their stuff, the details that they could put into that, and that, and I realized that that's what made a story come together. And that part of it struck me from an early age. I liked to be a part of it. I started keeping a hunting journal when I was a kid, and just started writing things down. And as I got into high school, I started thinking, what I would really like to do with my life is work for a hunting and fishing magazine. So I majored in journalism, went to Murray State University, and had a few lucky breaks, and here I am.
Well, I'm glad things worked out for you and got you into this industry, because I need to publicly thank you, Will. You were one of the first people who ever gave me advice when it comes to writing in the outdoor industry and submitting freelance articles and everything. So I'm glad that you had a head start in it, so you could give me a little bit of advice too, because it certainly helped.
Well, man, advice never hurts, and it usually comes for free, I guess, unless you're talking to a lawyer. And I can make lawyer jokes. My dad's a lawyer, man, I wouldn't have gotten to where I was without some good advice. But you've got the talent and the knowledge too, and it takes more than advice to make it. So
I appreciate saying that.
You've done really well.
I'm kind of curious, as you talked about the fact that you developed this love for writing early on, listening to other folks and their hunting stories and stuff. As I think about myself, I definitely fall into that same camp, but I also became a voracious reader. Do you also love reading about hunting and things like that too, or you just like sharing your own stories?
Man, I do read a lot. I used to read outdoor magazines. Man, I would have stacks and stacks and stacks of them. Read all kinds of them. Had a few authors that I really liked as I was kind of getting into the business. And the same thing went for outdoor television. Well, it really wasn't. It wasn't Outdoor Channel when I was coming up. It was there were some you go to Walmart and get you some hunting tapes and some DVDs. The Monster Bucks videos and things like that. And man, I grew up watching those things. I guess kind of the outdoor television started getting really popular just about the time that that I was growing up and starting to think about this is my career. I read a lot. I probably don't read as many other outdoor magazines now as I once did, mainly just because how it is. You're working on this stuff all day, and at the end of the day, you kind of want to read something different. So what I do like to read, I was a journalism major in college, but I was a creative writing minor. I do like to read some fiction whenever I have the time for it. I really like Southern literature. There's a few guys that I really like to read when I'm fortunate enough to get the time. And actually, man, I'm one of those guys that when I'm sitting in the deer stand, I always have a book with me. People can say what they want. Well, you're reading a book, you're not paying attention. And maybe I might have spooked 2 deer in my lifetime reading a book, or had a couple of deer come up and surprise me by reading a book. But what I usually tell guys whenever they bring that up, I'm like, well, you know what? When I'm reading a book, I'm sitting there very still with a book in my lap, and I'm not moving, and it keeps me in the tree longer. And As you well know, man, that is everything.
So true.
For deer hunting is being in that damn tree. And so, if a book helps me stay in the tree or stay in the blind, you know what? that's a chance I'm willing to take, and I read all the time.
Yeah, I've got a lot of friends that think I'm crazy during the rut. You know, I'm one of the guys that really likes to hunt all day, day after day after day. And my secret is no secret. It's just I read when I'm out there. It just keeps your mind going, keeps you in it. And like you said, maybe there's a small chance that you might spook something, or you might not be 100% focused the entire time, but it's a heck of a lot better than if you're on the couch. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you're hunting in Kentucky a lot of the time. Are you hunting a number of other states for whitetails too, or are you spending most of your deer season right at home?
You know what, man? I travel all over the country to turkey hunt and to waterfowl hunt and to hunt other critters. I go out west and hunt some, hunt antelope and elk and mule deer, and I've been fortunate to travel to hunt a lot of things. But when it comes to my deer season, it's hard to convince me to leave home. Now I have hunted some other states. I've hunted Texas, and of course I'm right here on the Tennessee line. I don't know if you know that, but I'm about 10 minutes from the Tennessee line, so I do have some places in Tennessee that I hunt. So I will travel a little bit, but man, just going to shoot a big buck is not the part of deer season that gets me that I really anticipate. Like, what I really enjoy is property management and seeing that come to fruition and, kind of doing my own thing. Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate enough that I co-own, along with my dad, my wife, and my brother, the farm that I grew up hunting in Caldwell County, Kentucky. It's about 120 acres, and get to do a lot of work there. And then Michelle and I also own another 70 acres down here in Callaway County, right next to Kentucky Lake, that we bought a few years ago. Well, we bought it in 2 chunks over the years. And, man, honestly, I get as much enjoyment out of working on those properties throughout the summer and, scouting the things and hanging my trail cameras and just knowing that, when the sun starts going down, my food plot's going to be full of deer. And knowing that, Michelle or my brother or my dad or a friend, if they're out there hunting, that they're going to be seeing deer. And me too, yeah, definitely. I definitely like to sit there and hunt. I don't want to take that away from it. I'm going out there to kill a deer for sure. But the point is, between traveling to maybe a better place where I've got a better chance of killing a big buck, or staying here at home and shooting, a smaller buck or even a couple of does that, I feel like I've put in my time for, that's kind of what does it for me during deer season. So I like to travel for other stuff. I kind of like to stay home to deer hunt.
When it comes to quality deer, though, these days it's hard to find another state other than a couple of those most hyped that are getting a whole lot more press, positive press, than Kentucky has been over the last 5 years or so. I mean, there's a lot of great deer coming out of there, and so many people have been kind of realizing this recently. What is making Kentucky such a high-quality place to hunt these days?
Well, I think there are a number of things from from kind of a macro management perspective. We have been a 1 buck limit state for my entire hunting career. There may have been a time, a few decades ago, I think, where maybe you could kill 2 bucks, but and there are a few opportunities, different quota hunts and things in the state where you can still kill 2 deer. But for the most part, we're a 1 buck state. We've always been the culture of a 1 buck state, and man, it's just one of those things. A guy knows he can only kill 1 deer. He usually likes to make sure it's a pretty good one. So we've got that going for us. We've had, Western Kentucky in particular, where I am, is a pretty agriculture heavy. People think of Kentucky and they think of the hills and hollers of Eastern Kentucky, where all the mountains are, and certainly pretty country out there, but there's not many deer that live there. All the deer are kind of in Central and Western Kentucky, and it's around here, it's people are surprised when if they've never seen it. It's a heavy agriculture region, with a lot of row crops, soybeans and corn, that obviously puts a lot of deer food on the ground. But I think one of the ways that we differ in kind of some of the Midwestern states that have more ag than us is that, I think on average we have a little more cover. We've got a longer growing season. We have some bigger blocks of timber. You know, people log their timber around here, and our woods are just thick. We have just this abundance of natural browse that's growing for a long time, and it's around all these crop fields, and you know that's just good deer habitat. I mean, you know how important natural browse is to a deer herd's year-round health, and we have a lot of that. And so, you know, you combine all that, and some of our agricultural practices have changed over the years, you know, especially when you talk about the last, 5 years, 10 years. You know, once upon a time, Kentucky was a pretty big dairy state, a pretty big tobacco state, and, you know, those things aren't as prevalent now. And so now those fields that you once had in dairy or tobacco, they're either in soybeans or corn, or farmers have just let them go, you know, and they become all grown up and nasty and tangled. And man, that's just a recipe for growing deer. You know, so you've got those fundamental habitat things, you know, in place to have a lot of deer and to give them the nutrition and the habitat they need to get big and grow, and got the regulations that keep people from killing a bunch of little bitty bucks. And then you've also got some other mechanisms in place that, you know, let's be honest, make it a little bit easier to kill a big deer. We've got a 2-week rifle season, or, you know, some parts of the state, I think it's 3-week rifle season.
Wow.
During the rut. You know, comes in the second week, you know, the second Saturday in November, I think, is the traditional opener. Don't quote me on that absolutely, but I'd want to look it up on on the Fish and Wildlife website. But it's right around that second week in November and stays in usually till about Thanksgiving. And you know, when those bucks are out chasing does and you're sitting there with a high-powered rifle, it's a little bit easier to kill them. We've also we've got a very early bow season that opens the first Saturday in September. And typically for the first week of bow season, our big deer are, they're in velvet, and they're very, very easy to pattern at that time of year. If you've ever hunted velvet bucks, bachelor bucks, you know that. And, you know, the other reality, not to sugarcoat things, is we can pour corn out on the ground and hunt right over it. And, man, you can kill a big deer at that time of year that is in full velvet, really regardless of your feelings toward baiting deer. It's just an effective way to kill them. And, you know, a lot of guys are killing some really huge deer around here that first week in September. That the success rate is pretty high, and I think you'll find that some of our biggest deer season after season are killed during that first week, and it's guys that have got them patterned on a corn pile, or, you know, a corn pile off of a soybean field or a food plot or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Have you had much success in that early time period yourself?
Yeah, sure have. My biggest bow kill deer was, I think I killed him, September 15th, something like that. My wife's killed a couple of pretty nice full velvet deer, and I mean, you know, we're not, I'm not one of these guys that, you know, has got a 140 minimum or anything like that. You know, I like to target 3.5-year-old plus deer. You know, like I say, I'm managing pretty small acreage, and if I can get one that's pretty nice and gets my heart rate going, I'm probably going to shoot him. So, but we killed a lot of good deer at that time of year. Probably, you know, between that week and the first week, you know, we don't do a lot of gun hunting. We're mainly bow hunters. I did shoot one with a gun last year, but, you know, between that week and the first week in November, those are my two favorite weeks of deer season for sure.
So I have actually never been able to hunt that early. All the states I've always hunted have always been that kind of either late September or early October opener. But this year, for the first time, I'm going to be going to Montana, actually, for their opener. So that's like September 3rd. So I'll finally have a chance at one of those velvet bucks. But it's a topic we actually haven't talked about a whole lot on the show ever. Could you kind of walk us through what your game plan is for that super early season, you know, early September hunting? You know, how are you patterning these bucks and then getting a shot at one? And let's, I guess, whether you use bait or not, I guess tell us however it is you're doing it.
Yeah. Well, whether you use bait or not, I mean, what I like about bait, and I do use bait. I mean, I've written about that. You know, people don't like it. That's fine. That's up to them. They don't have to use it. But it's one of those things that I will use it in conjunction with all the food plot work that I've done all summer. And what I use it for is to position that deer in a spot that is advantageous for me to hunt. So, so that I'm not sitting right over the top of one of my food plots and blowing deer out of there whenever I go in. And I start kind of creating my ambush really next month. I have, food plots that, on our places that traditionally I know there's going to be a bachelor group of bucks using that thing. During the summer, I'll have, mineral licks just off the edges of those food plots and start kind of, taking some inventory and getting pictures. And then what I want to do is I like to set my bait site in such a way so that it's in a spot to where I can get to my stand and get out of my stand without running all the deer out of the food plot. So, usually it's going to be in a spot where, I'll set several, obviously, for different wind directions, but I'll set them so that given that wind direction, I can sneak right in and see that deer come out in the food plot, and my hope is that, once he comes out, he's going to work his way to that bait site and I can kill him. So that's kind of one of the ways I do it. We hunt with a lot of pop-up ground blinds like that. And what I like to do is I like to set them kind of right on the crest of a hill right next to one of my food plots and kind of set my bait site just down from the crest of that hill so that, I'm watching the food plot. I can get deer up on the bait. If I don't get a deer that I want to shoot, I can slip out of that ground blind and immediately have a hill between myself and the deer. And then, of course, I'm playing the wind. And, man, I can slip out of a field and be within bow range of deer and get out of there without them knowing I'm there. And that's what I want. And it takes a couple of years of kind of dialing into a spot to be able to figure that out, but that's ultimately the goal. The other thing too is, I do knock on some doors, and I've got permission to hunt some farms where, it's big crop fields and things, and I don't bait those areas, and I don't want to give the impression that the only way you can kill an early season deer is over bait. It's certainly not. It's just it's a good tool to have if you're hunting a small property. But I've probably honestly killed more early season bucks just by glassing them of an evening, on big soybean fields or big hay fields than I had by setting bait. And what I like to do then. The baiting process on my farm, it's kind of an all-summer thing of, kind of getting them conditioned to come into that spot and taking trail camera pictures of them. But if I'm, scouting, just kind of traditional farm country, I like to go out. Trail cameras are great, but, man, there's no substitute for going out in the evenings with a pair of binoculars and hiding in the fence row and just watching that field and watching it come to life, during that last hour of daylight. And, I like to see a bachelor group of bucks, and they don't a lot of people think if a group of bucks comes out on this trail this night, they're going to use that trail all the time. And in my experience, they might use the same trail 2 nights in a row, but typically, man, they're going to use one of half a dozen trails within a 200-yard radius of that part of the field to come out. And at that point, it just kind of comes down to luck, and you just really it takes, I like to glass a group of bucks for a week and just kind of figure out like the area that not only where they like to come out, but the area of the field where they like to end up. And you'll find that a group of bucks will, while they might use a different trail to come out in the field, they'll almost always end up in the same area of the field for 2 or 3 nights. And I don't know if it's because that part of the field has sweeter beans or whatever it is, but if you can find that spot of the field that the deer are going to, it kind of gives you the same advantage of setting a bait pile, and that you can hunt that spot, and kind of set up so that the deer are coming to you rather than you're setting up, 50 yards from where they might be bedded down. You know what I'm saying?
That's a great point. In that kind of situation where you're glassing a field, trying to figure out where these deer are coming out of and where they're going to, and it sounds like in this type of situation you wouldn't already have a stand up. What's your game plan for getting in there and getting a stand hung? Are you, is that something you're hanging it that day and hunting it right away, or do you try to get in there and wait a week, or how, and what's your kind of plan for that?
I like to hunt out of a climbing stand. We've got a lot of tall, straight timber around here, as Well, you've kind of got that all over the South. I know you guys in the Midwest, y'all like your hang-on stands, and I like hang-on stands too. But, man, a climbing stand, I can get in there. I can carry it in on my back. And, that's what I'm doing a lot of the times whenever I'm glassing at those deers. I'm looking at those field edge trees and saying, okay, that one's tall and it's straight. It doesn't have a bunch of limbs that I got to cut to be able to climb it. I can get up there 20 feet and, I know I can get a stand in that tree. And, man, if I can't, honestly, it is so thick and green around here the first part of September. I've shot a lot of deer just bringing in a little fold-out, dove stool and sitting on the ground right there in a fence row and just sit still. So,
any advice for hunting from a ground blind, just in general, whether it be early season or later in the year? That's something that, especially now with the advent of these, easy to collapse portable ground blinds, more and more people are finding these things to be pretty useful. Whether it be with that or just sitting in a stool, what helps you make sure that happens the right way?
Well, sitting in a stool, I think it's a lot of guys, really kind of overcomplicate things. You sit out there turkey hunting, for example. You're in full camo. You're sitting still. How many deer have you had walk within bow range of you? You never know you were there. It's one of those things that, playing the wind is at a premium. But what I like to do is kind of sit where I've got good cover at my back, and then I like to sit where I've got a big tree, in front of me, maybe, 5 or 6 feet away. I don't want it to be so close that, like, my nocked arrow is going to bump against it, but I do like it to be right there. And that way, when deer come out, especially the does and little bucks that I may not be shooting that afternoon, you can kind of lean behind that tree and, and honestly kind of you're moving around a little bit as they're out there to keep that tree between you and them. And then it is a great tool for when you do have a deer that you want to shoot. When he's coming out, when he walks behind that tree, when you can't see his eye, he cannot see you. And you can draw back and you can kill him as soon as he steps out of the spot. I've done it a bunch of times. It's the way I grew up deer hunting. So that works. And a lot of guys don't have the confidence to do that because, they think they have to be in a blind or they have to be 20 feet up in a tree. And the fact is people killed a lot of deer like that for a long time. And it they hadn't figured it out yet. So it does still work. For hunting the places on our farms that, where we know we're going to, I definitely like to set a pop-up blind. I like to set it at least a month in advance of season, if not more. I do brush them in a little bit, and I'll freshen that brush, throughout the year. And I think probably my biggest tips for pop-up blinds is, set them in an area, they're going to have a zipper door on one side of it or some type of door. It's usually a zipper. Set it in an area so that when you step out of that door, you're immediately in cover and you can get away. And once it's set, man, get in there and look at the shooting windows that you're going to want to have open and open those the day that you set it. Leave everything else shut and don't get tempted to open them up. You can definitely kind of peer around them and look and see, watch for deer coming and stuff like that. But if you can't shoot out of that window, you need to leave it shut. The darker that you have it inside that blind, the better it is. And then, like I say, the windows that you want to shoot out of, leave them open the entire year. Because if you look at a ground blind, man, you can look at a pop-up ground blind from 300 yards away with a pair of binoculars, and if it's all closed up, it looks, like a big stump. If you open that window, it's got a huge black hole in it that you can see without binoculars. Mm-hmm. And, man, you leave a blind closed all season, and then you get in there to hunt it the first night, and you open it up, deer absolutely notice that. There's no doubt in my mind, and hunting guides and stuff that I've talked to that use a lot of ground blinds, I'll tell you the same thing. Open your shooting windows the day you set it, and don't ever close them.
Makes a lot of sense. Keep it consistent so they get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned that the first week of September and then the first week of November are typically your best weeks around your property there. So we've talked about what you're doing in September. What are you guys doing that first week in November that's leading to all that success?
Well, I mentioned earlier that, we're not really what I would call, and when I say we, I'm really talking about my wife, Michelle, and I. She's a very serious bow hunter as well, and she and I are, each other's primary hunting buddy. although we don't get to hunt together a whole lot. We've got a 2-year-old son, and it kind of limits our time together in the field. We do kind of we switch back and forth. I babysit one night and she hunts, and then we swap it up the next night. So
Nice.
Our strategy, like I say, we're not big, trophy hunters. Yeah, definitely. If we've got a good buck, we'll try to kill him and hold off. But during kind of the latter part of September and through October, we eat a whole lot of deer meat, man. We try not to eat a whole lot of store-bought stuff. So we're shooting a lot of does. We're trying to get does in the freezer. And then about October 15th, we quit shooting does. And the reason for that is I like to get groups of, just family groups of does, 2 or 3 big does, a few fawns. I like to get them really comfortable and get them coming to a food source. And if I can keep from going in there and bothering them, hunting them at all, I will. A lot of guys are really starting to try to pattern a buck that time of year. And, yeah, I want to know about pictures of bucks too, but I'm really worried, not worried, but really focused on where those does are going to be. And I want to get several groups of does, habituated to certain areas. And once I learn where those does are, before the peak breeding and all that, when the bucks first start chasing, man, those areas where those groups of does are using every day, before they've been harassed and run out of the fields, that's where you're going to kill a good deer. That's where you're going to kill those first few deer that are out cruising, and that's kind of our strategy. And again, I'm kind of speaking for small properties and things. If I'm hunting somewhere else, I'm looking for funnels and things to try to kind of maximize all that deer movement traffic. But that first week in November, that has been my highest odds hunt, is finding those groups of does and really hunting them. And just waiting, because you can guarantee that they're going to attract, whatever good bucks are in the area. Those bucks are going to come by and check that stuff. And just like you said earlier, that's the time of year, to me, that I want to be on the stand as long as I can. All-day hunts are great that time of year.
Yeah. Now, where those does are hanging out, are you talking about their bedding areas they're going to be in most of the time during the day, or are you focusing on where they're feeding?
I'm still focused on the food a whole lot. Now, the properties that I manage, I manage for a lot of old field habitat. So, a lot of the times, the areas that I'm hunting are they are food plots. They are kind of primary feeding areas, but they are immediately adjacent to this really nice, thick old field bedding cover. And so, in a lot of ways, like the bedding areas and the feeding areas are really kind of one and the same. You know what I mean? I mean, the deer, just those groups of does live right there, and they might bed 50 or 100 yards off of that plot, but I know that they are in that area, and I'm going to set up for them on the food sources, because that is the best way for me to keep from running them out, and that is the spot where I know of a morning, and especially in the evenings, I know I'm going to see them. And, the more times you see them, the more likely, you are to see them when they've got a buck chasing them. So give you a classic example, man. One of our food plots that I had going last year, about a half-acre plot, I did just that. We started getting a big group of does that was using that thing in October, and I just kept tabs on them. I did not hunt them. We didn't mess with those deer. Just kept getting them on trail camera, We're getting a few nighttime pictures of bucks, but, man, these does were, they were in there at night. Then, usually about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, they'd ease out in that field, get them a bite, and they'd ease on back to bed. And then late in the evening, here they'd be, and they'd be out there, till after dark. And they're there every day, from the middle of October up through the first part of November. The first morning that I went in there to hunt it, I think it was November 1st or November 2nd, I got sat down in the blind and just started cracking daylight. And as soon as it cracked daylight, I could see one of the fawns out in the food plot with me. And I thought, well, Mama's around here somewhere. And sure enough, I hear some does running around in the woods and hear a buck grunting. And here comes the whole clan of them trotting right out in the field, the whole group of does. And here comes this really nice 10-point. And I screwed around and managed not to kill him. But that plan just almost worked beautifully.
That's how it goes sometimes.
It's one of those things that like I say, all the pieces of the puzzle came together except killing that big deer with a bow and arrow, and sometimes that's just the hardest part of it. So.
Gosh, that's the truth. You mentioned a couple different times that you were getting pictures of these deer and maybe tracking these does or getting nighttime pictures of bucks. How exactly are you using trail cameras at that time of year, both leading into November and then once there actually starts to be some of that rutting activity? Are you using it just to keep tabs of daylight activity or specific bucks? How are you doing that?
Well, you'll probably notice as I'm talking about hunting year-round, the common denominator in my deer hunting almost year-round, man, is food. And that's probably because we're hunting, on such small properties. I like to really hunt the fringes of stuff, and so that's where I put a lot of my food is kind of on the fringes of that, of that bedding cover. And that keeps me from getting in there deep. Like I like to have all of my food plots and my trail cameras, as many as I can to where I can drive to them, whether it's in my truck or on a tractor, and I can just get out and check them and get back in, and I don't have to walk through a bunch of stuff and scare a bunch of deer off. So, that's where I keep my cameras. It doesn't matter if it's in the early season or during the rut. I don't like to, I put cameras over scrapes, and, you might get that one awesome picture of a buck on a scrape, but, man, I've scared the hell out of bucks over scrapes with trail cameras. And I've come to realize that, that scrape is going to be a great place to get a picture, but it's probably not going to be the place you're going to kill that deer most of the time. And, my trail camera scouting has been better served by keeping those cameras on the food plots and on the bait sites, where I'm seeing these does. You can definitely, there are times when, say Halloween, you pull a trail camera card and daylight pictures of does and little bucks, and then, oh man, there he is, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he's coming out there to check it. And yeah, that's definitely my cue to get in there and hunt that deer. So, that's kind of my thing. Year round, I think, sometimes we kind of fall into the trap of overanalyzing what we need to be doing as deer hunters. Do we need to get back off in the timber and in the funnels and hunt staging areas and all this? We're really, kind of the whole formula of food, does, bucks. It works year round, so including the rut.
So true. So, being the hunting editor at Field and Stream, I imagine, and especially I guess with all your time leading up to this, I imagine you've got to meet and speak and learn from a tremendous number of really, really, really successful hunters. And I kind of wonder, given that huge sample size of hunting and expertise, is there anything you've found that most of these guys or girls have in common, the very best hunters? Is there anything that you could look to now over all your years and say, yeah, they all had this, or they all did that? Anything come to mind?
Time in the stand in a high-quality area. Absolutely. You cannot kill a big deer or any deer in a place where they don't live, and that's just the way it is, man. So you have to have an area where that those deer live, and then beyond that, you have to put in the time. And it's not just a matter of going every day. It's not that, but you have to put in the time when the time is best for you. Mm-hmm. On the days when that wind is right, you better be in a tree somewhere. And that's just that's one of the. It's easy for me to say because, as a part of my job, I can, I do need to go hunt a lot. And, I'm able to, cut out of work every afternoon at 2 o'clock during deer season and go get in the stand. And I understand a lot of guys can't do that. And so, what I tell folks is that, look, the days when you think, well, it's too hot or, the moon phase isn't right or this and that, man, you still got to go. I've killed bucks in howling wind. I've killed them in the rain. I've killed them when it was 95 degrees. I've killed deer under about every weather condition you can imagine. Yeah, my favorite time is a high-pressure, still, cold morning, just like everybody else. But, the fact is you have to spend time in the tree because this is even when things are absolutely perfect, if you're only going to hunt one morning, you're going out there, and still the odds are against you that big deer is going to walk by within bow range, and so you just have to keep going. And I think that's kind of the same with every type of hunting, but especially with bow hunting whitetails. I think that's those are the two key ingredients. And again, I'll emphasize that time it does definitely don't go sit. If you've only got 70 acres to hunt, don't go sit in a tree when the wind is flat wrong. Just because Brantley said you need to be in the tree. It's not that. It's right. when the conditions are right, you need to be out there. So, and when they're wrong, you need to be somewhere else. So whether it's, on another farm that maybe is not as good, but you've got permission to hunt on, or a piece of public ground, just go somewhere where the conditions are good for you to hunt that day.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. That's such a key point. I'm a huge advocate and believer in the idea of waiting till the right conditions, the right time to go into your best spots. But at the same time, to your point, you want to be in a tree still. So it's great to have like burner stands, I kind of call them, spots you can go to where you can still get out and hunt. But when the conditions aren't right, you're not, risking ruining your best spots, but you're still out there, still have a chance. And I think that's a good idea for people to try to go into a season. Yeah, make sure you've got your good spots and your main hunting property, but try to prepare for those off days too, when it's not going to be ideal to go into your best spots, but have a secondary spot you can go to.
Exactly. Man, I wait all year to go deer hunting. I love it. And the afternoons when the weather's pretty, and the wind is not right for one of my, the stand that I really want to hunt, it kills me to sit at the house and not go. And, I would much rather go sit in a burner stand, as you call it, or, whatever it is, even if it's a stand where I'm just like, man, I'm going to go out and shoot a doe this afternoon. Fact is, I've had a lot of hunts where I was going out to shoot a doe on a given day, or just really going out, almost hunting like an observation stand just to see what I would see,
right,
and end up killing a deer. One of the biggest bow kills I've ever gotten. He's sitting here on the wall in my office, big old, pretty heavy 8-point. I killed him one afternoon in September. I went out, it was back when I was working for a fishing magazine. I cut out of work just a little bit early. And I did not get in the tree till about 6 o'clock, and I hunted just kind of the corner of this big cut cornfield, and got up as high in that tree as I could stand it so I could see the whole field. And I was really just wanting to glass this field and just see what came out for the afternoon. And this bachelor group of bucks came out probably 400 yards away, and damn if they didn't walk a beeline straight to my tree and end up right under me right at dark, and I killed one of them. And
wow.
It was, on the one hand, I was lucky that they came right to me, but on the other hand, I could have stayed home, could have stayed at work, and, I'd have never seen that deer.
Yeah.
So.
Gosh, one of the things I hate the most is when I make the mistake of saying, it's not the right night to hunt, and I just stay in the house, and then from behind my house, in both sides of my house, actually, I can see crop fields or food plots and wide open areas, so inevitably, I'm checking the window every 5-10 minutes, and then when I see a bunch of deer or a buck, I just get so upset. There's nothing worse than that feeling. So
drive you nuts. Yep.
Oh yeah, drive you absolutely nuts. So you just shared with us, what would be some of these key consistent things that the best hunters have. On the flip side, from everything you've seen and heard given your career, are there any things that you find? Are there any mistakes, I guess, that you find being made the most often, either by others or by yourself, that are kind of just chronic mistakes that we bow hunters keep making for some reason?
Oh yeah, man. There's a lot of things that we all do. I think one of the things that I'm seeing in this area in particular, and it's it's kind of symptomatic. We talked about all the good press that Kentucky is getting these days. It's a popular whitetail spot, man, and it's obviously created a market for Kentucky deer hunting. And so we've got some very successful outfitters in this area that have leased up a lot of the ground that was formerly available for me and my buddies to hunt. And I don't really blame the outfitters. I know a lot of those outfitters, and they're good guys and they're hard working. But the fact is they've driven the lease prices up so high that it can be hard for the average guy to get in there and find a place to hunt. And I think because of that, it kind of, I don't know, it almost kind of puts some guys into a deer depression. They think, man, there's nothing left out there to hunt. I don't have anywhere to go because everything's leased up, and I think what guys end up doing is focusing on that rather than either focusing on the ground that they do have to hunt or knocking on doors looking for more ground to hunt. Even though this is a really popular area, for outfitted hunts, there's still plenty of farmers out there that'll still let you hunt, and will especially still let you hunt if you give them a little cash. There's still leases to be found. And so, or, you can do what Michelle and I did and save up your money for a down payment on a farm. Yeah, hell, we're going to be in debt for a long time, but you can't take it with you. And hunting ground's important to us, so that's what we decided to spend our money on. So I think that's part of it. Is one of the big mistakes is not working hard enough or early enough to, either secure new ground or to make sure the ground that you're hunting is the best that it can be. That's one of them that, one big mistake that I see. And when you talk about, obsessing over things, like if I obsess over anything, it's over how my food plots are looking, getting new ones in the ground and, making sure I can, spray the grass out of them and keep them mowed and all that stuff. And that's one big thing. I think the other thing too, just kind of, if you're talking about bow hunters in particular, and take a drink of water there.
No problem.
This is something that I certainly have fallen into. I had a really bad season a couple of years ago, and you and I have talked about it before, in which I shot a couple of deer and lost them. And, that's it's a reality for hunting with anything. I mean, gun or bow, every now and then you're going to shoot a deer and not recover it, and, man, it just sucks. But where I made the mistake a few years ago was rather than learn from it and recover from it and move on and let it get into my head. And what happens when you mess up? You're going to mess up on some deer when you're hunting with a bow. That's just the way it is, whether you miss them or don't get a shot or spook them when you're drawing back or hit them and don't find them. You have to recover from those mistakes and not let it get into your head. And you have to remember at that moment of truth that, man, this is a game of inches, and you have to settle that pin. And so for me, the takeaway lesson in all of that was, I'm a pretty good shot with a bow. I probably shoot more than the average bow hunter, and I'm, constantly tweaking on my equipment and working on my equipment. And as part of my role at Field and Stream, I do a lot of gear testing. And so, I love to shoot long range here in the backyard. I practice, out to 80, 90 yards pretty often. And, there for a while, I kind of had it in my head, well, man, I can kill a deer at 50 yards. And some people can, but the fact is, you are probably at about 20% of your efficiency, when you're shooting at a deer compared to shooting at a target. That adrenaline just does crazy things to you. And it's not only the adrenaline, it's the shooting stances that you find yourself in out in the woods, whether you're sitting on a ground blind stool or up in a stand. You're turned funny. It's getting dark. The angles are sharp, and, man, that adrenaline is just raging, and it messes you up. And so, I kind of took a step back last year in particular, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not shooting at a deer with a bow anymore unless he's 30 yards or closer. And, man, it didn't cost me really any opportunities at all last year. And just made the deer that I did take a shot at. I knew I was going to kill him, and I did. And that, I think that's something that I won't say every bow hunter needs to do a better job at it, but it was something that I kind of needed that reality check for myself that, hey, we're bow hunting out here to get close to them, and that's what I needed to do a better job of, and, make sure that when that moment of truth comes, that I make the very best shot that I can. And if I have any doubts, just don't shoot. Let him go, and you're probably going to get another chance at him. So.
Yeah, that's such a great kind of message, because especially today in the hunting media and stuff, we see so many people taking super long shots, maybe with a rifle or with a bow, and in some case, or at least in the cases that you see on TV, they make the shot, and I think it gives the impression to a lot of folks on the other end of the TV watching that, I should be able to do that too. And even if you are a terrific long-range shot on the range, just like you said, Will, things are different out in the field. And I think, it's always better to err on the conservative side because this is a living animal. I wouldn't want to take too many chances with that kind of responsibility. But
here's what you don't see on TV. You see the deer that those guys kill. You don't see the ones that they shoot at from 60 yards that they hit in the hands and they get away, or the ones that they miss. And, buddy, I'm here to tell you, I've worked in the hunting business a long time, been around a lot of TV folks, and I should say, am good friends with a lot of those guys. And I don't mean to just disparage the TV guys, but what I am getting at is they have the luxury of not showing what they don't want to show. And things happen to them just like they happen to you and me. And, you take 4 60-yard shots at a deer, and you're probably going to kill one of them. But what happens on those other 3?
Exactly. Yeah. To this point, and this is actually, I know you've got to run here in a couple of minutes, and I've got one last question for you, and it ties in very nicely with what we just mentioned here. Writing for Field and Stream, now being an editor at Field and Stream, which is one of the absolute largest brands within the hunting world, and representatives of the hunting world to the rest of the public. I think, whether it be Field and Stream or anyone in the outdoor media, or really any hunter, any average guy or girl hunter out there, we all represent hunting to the non-hunting public. I guess I'm curious about what your thoughts are, though, on how we're doing as the media in representing what hunting is, what we do, and the perception that the non-hunting public has of that. Are we doing a good job? Do things need to change? From your perspective, with Field and Stream, where do we need to go in the hunting media? And then as average hunters, what can we do differently too?
I think the hunting media is doing a pretty decent job. You look, and I'm not saying that just to toot my own horn or toot your horn, but I think there is a pretty strong conservation and family focus, and a focus on getting new people into the woods throughout the hunting media. You see it mentioned all the time on the TV shows. In the magazines, things like that. You look at, you look at the rate of female hunters in the woods, for example. It's higher than it's ever been. I don't think it's any coincidence at all that you've had some really good role models like, Tiffany Lukoski and Melissa Bachman and folks like that who've done a really good job at making hunting seem accessible to the ladies who would really like to try it, and maybe they never have tried it. And so, I think on that point, we have done a pretty good job. I think, maybe a couple of years ago we might have gotten a little bit nutty with some of the big buck craze, and that's probably fueled some things that aren't so healthy to the long term, to the long term health of deer hunting and really all kinds of hunting. When the focus becomes more on the antlers than on putting backstrap on your table. To the average non-hunter, that's not cool, and I think we need to be cognizant of that. Doesn't mean going out and killing every little buck you see, but it's just something we need to think about. Whenever we're focused so much on score and the age of a deer and things like that, we need to remember that if a guy shoots a deer, it's because that deer came out and he was excited about it and he wanted to fill his tag, and as long as it's his tag and he did it legally, it's really not anybody else's business. You know what I mean? Now, so far as, hunters in particular, just kind of everyday hunters, I'll tie that into social media a little bit and kind of get on my soapbox, man. I think that is the biggest threat facing hunting right now. The environment that hunters have kind of created online toward one another so often is just toxic. You look at, for Field and Stream, or whenever I was working for Realtree, you post a story of a hunter that's been successful and killed a good deer, posted online. We do a story about it, and they're excited about it. And man, just immediately the people pile on to them saying, oh, well, they shot it with a crossbow, and that's not really hunting, or they shot it over bait, and that's not really hunting, or they shot it in a high fence, and not knowing whether or not they shot it in a high fence. And I'll say for the record, I don't think shooting a deer in a high fence is really hunting. But a lot of people just assume that if Realtree's sharing it or that Field and Stream's sharing it and it's a big buck, that people shot it in a high fence. And hunters have just gotten to the point, not all of them, but a lot of them, they've just gotten to the point where they're just mean to each other online. And that has to stop because, man, that is not doing anybody any good. And, it's just... you hear the word infighting a lot, and people say, oh, we've got to do something about this. We've got to stop the infighting. And you can write about it until you're blue in the face, and yet it doesn't stop. So, I will continue to call people out on that and say that is a big problem. And I think that's probably as symptomatic of our social media culture, just as a nation as it is just hunters. But, man, it's one of those things we've got to get a handle on because it's a real problem.
So true. And social media really, like you said, it's such an enabler for, these types of behaviors that probably were there always within the hunting culture or our entire United States culture, I suppose. But once you have this tool to put stuff out there online anonymously or without having to be face-to-face to someone, very quickly things can spiral into a pretty negative place.
Yep,
yeah.
Absolutely. So.
Well, Will, I know you've got to hit the road, so I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. And I guess before I let you go really quickly, is there anything that our listeners should be keeping an eye out for from Field and Stream or coming up on the website that you want to direct them to or to take a look at soon?
Yeah, man, our subscription renewal notices. Keep an eye out for those and renew. Keep me in the job.
Perfect. Good advice.
No, man, we've got some awesome stuff coming up. I'm working on a big land management feature right now for August. As a matter of fact, I'm late. Got to get that thing turned in, but interviewed some guys like, some guys you probably have heard of them before, Eric Long and Craig Harper. Those guys know a little bit about growing food plots and stuff, so I get to talking to them. They tell me about everything that I thought I knew that I really didn't. So yeah, we've got some cool stuff coming up. It just Field and Stream staff and Outdoor Life's their staff too. I mean, really. Across the board, the editors, the designers, our art team, and our freelance contributors. Man, I'm always just amazed that you think year after year, like, what else is there to be said about deer hunting or catching a bass on a topwater plug, and somehow we find it, and make cool stuff out of it and tell good stories, and I continue to be proud of working with that team, and yeah, we've got some good stuff coming out this fall.
Awesome.
So yeah, like I said, renew those subscriptions so you can be sure to see it.
Perfect. Well, I've been a lifelong subscriber myself, and I'll be keeping it going because, like you said, you guys are doing terrific work, and man, I really enjoy it. So everyone listening, make sure you do get those subscriptions in and subscribe to Outdoor Life too. You'll see some stuff from me coming up here soon too. So, Will, thank you so much, and good luck this summer and fall.
All right, Mark, you too, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right, and with that, we'll wrap things up. A few quick reminders before we go, though. First, like I mentioned at the top, be sure to check out 100% Wild, our new podcast. Secondly, if you haven't yet, could you take a quick second to leave us a rating or review on iTunes? It would mean a ton, and it helps a lot. So thank you to those who already have done that. And we also need to thank our partners who help make this podcast possible. So big thank you to Sitka Gear, Trophy Ridge, Bear Archery, Redneck Blinds, Huntera Maps, Ozonics, Carbon Express, Maven Optics, and the Whitetail Institute of North America. And finally, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed this chat with Will as much as I did. And until next time, stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. You simply pour a can into your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. So pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more.